why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Hello, it's the 7th day of January 2019, and you're listening to And Then There's That on the Heart of America Broadcasting Network. This is our regular Monday feature, so just hang on tight because we got a lot to talk about today. A couple of very interesting stories that started percolating over the last several months, kind of came to a head over the weekend. And we're going to take a little bit of historical look and give you the and then there's that perspective on both of the shutdown, the wall, as well as how it relates to, of all things, the Electoral College that Democrats are now suggesting they wish to eliminate. So we're going to break that down for you, have a little bit of fun, connect the dots, and give you some historical perspective on that. But do remember that the Michael Hart Show, heartofamerica.net, and of course, and then there's that, is brought to you in part by Liberty One Tech. You can visit them at libertyonetech.com. Save 15% on the Talk Text Plus when you mention Heart of America. Over the course of, what are we on now? 3 weeks now. It's gotten so heated out there as it relates to the wall. Now Donald Trump saying he's going to keep the wall. The debate out there and government shutdown indefinitely if need be. And, of course, the debate over immigration has a long time played in to many administrations. And I think a lot of folks seem to forget from a historical perspective, which is why I'm so high and mighty on history. And we don't have to go back to the 1700s or the 1800s. We can go back to last week. It's gotten so heated out there that I'm actually doing a couple of media hits this week alone on the wall with some of the national news media. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out over the course of the next couple of 3 weeks. But, President Trump has actually started to channel previous administrations on this very issue. Now, what also was interesting is that as the Democrats continue to move forward with their, supposed mandated blue wave or whatever they think it is today, that they are beginning to have very serious discussions about the future of the wall, immigration policy, as well as the future of the Electoral College. But I think it's also very important, and it would be very disrespectful to history if we did not go back in time just a little bit and listen to where we have been on immigration in the past. I am audio rich today, and I am really looking forward to smashing through some of the myths of what is out there and what has been perpetrated on the American psyche. And this is one of the reasons I'm so kind of twisting in the wind over this Electoral College story. So we're going to take the wall and border security and Trump and previous administrations, and then we're going to frost this political cake with the Electoral College debate and explain to you why the underpinnings of what the Democrats are suggesting as it relates to the Electoral College might have a little bit of veracity to them, but at the end of the day, the rationale for keeping the Electoral College, although constitutionally speaking not the same as when it was invented, is every bit as viable and valuable to us today to protect us from the intellect of the great unwashed, which is very demonstrated in some of the comments made as it relates to border security in the United States. Let's give you a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about, because now we are well into the government shutdown. The shutdown, of course, is over whether or not we're going to get funding for the wall. Trump wants $5.5 billion. Pelosi et al. Has offered him a little bit north of $1 billion. Pence is trying to meet in the middle and go all Pawn Stars and is seeking about 2.5. Trump said there's no way. He wants the full wall. This has more or less morphed into a playground battle. And even I'll be honest with you, even I'm losing a little bit of my patience over it, because even if we don't get the full $5.5 billion this go around, The House of Representatives has an opportunity to flip every 2 years anyway. So I would be quite comfortable getting half the wall built in that period of time and then seeking funding again. But what's even more interesting is the position that has been taken by Schumer, Pelosi, and others as it relates to the wall, but that does not bear out historically speaking. Check this little piece out from, 25 or so years ago. You may very well remember this voice speaking about the need for, immigration reform, but also border security.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
Now, what's really interesting about this is just yesterday, Trump he pulled out some very pro-border security comments from Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton as this ongoing partial federal government shutdown over the border wall funding gets into its third week. But you just heard from Bill Clinton. And it's so interesting that even the national news media from decades past had continued to flaunt the need for border security. Check out this particular report from CBS News well over a decade ago.
President Obama is sending 1,200 National Guard troops to boost security along the U.S.-Mexican border. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Chip Reed has the details. Good morning, Chip.
Well, good morning.
Now, let me stop that right there, because what you heard was President Obama sending troops to the border because he was concerned. Remember all that chatter about Trump separating families? Okay, just kind of hold on to that. This is one of the reasons the Electoral College thing concerns me so much. Now, this was actually during the Obama administration, where he is now sending troops, early in his administration, but right around the time that he was running for president and had just won the presidency. Check out these comments from Obama as it relates to the border security that now seems to permeate so much of the wall debate, as well as, of course, the shutdown.
The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders, and that should help stem some of the tide of illegal immigration in this country.
Now, just a couple of days ago, former President Obama very publicly just denounced and trounced President Trump over the border wall and the need for immigration reform, referring to the fact that it was going to cost billions of dollars in taxpayer dollars. It's so interesting to me that they're concerned about taxpayer dollars when it's something that they are not in support of. But in this particular case, here comes Obama just leveling and laying into Trump. But he's not the only one doing the exact same thing. Chucky Schumer has been up to his old games as well. And the reason we're going through this exercise is I want to bring this full circle here in just a little while, probably about 8:30 or so local time, in the discussion of the Electoral College, because the Democrats are talking about taking that up in this session. So you've got this media narrative that doesn't hold water whatsoever, with the great unwashed not understanding what's going on before them. So you've got CBS years ago speaking about immigration, Clinton speaking about immigration, Jimmy Carter, who was the one that expelled the Iranians from the United States and then put Iran and Iraq on a travel ban list way before Obama was even, a glitter in mommy's political eye. And so it's so fascinating to me that so many people have lost touch with this. So here we have Chuck Schumer making comments about Donald Trump. And tell me if this doesn't sound schoolyard is all live in hell.
Senator McConnell wanted me to negotiate the wall with President Trump. I said to him two things. First, it's not a negotiation, no wall. And second, I said only you can persuade him that he shouldn't do the wall because it'll cause a government shutdown.
Now, here's Schumer just 5 years ago.
Illegal immigration is wrong. And a primary goal of comprehensive immigration reform must be to dramatically curtail future illegal immigration. Second, operational control of our borders through significant additional increases in infrastructure, technology, and border personnel must be achieved within a year of enactment.
Now, you know what the definition of increases in infrastructure means? Here, let me define it for you. It means wall. And so, yet again, you've got this narrative that seems to ebb and flow with whoever's in power. When the Democrats have control of the House and the Senate and the White House, which they did in the first 2 years of the Obama administration, there's no need for the expanded voter base of the illegals. Now, here's where we start to tie it. I'm going to go a little early on you, a little premature. Here's where we start to tie this back towards the Electoral College debate. Okay, let's hear this one more time from Chucky Schumer, and then I'll stop it when I feel it's appropriate.
Senator McConnell wanted me to negotiate the wall with President Trump. I said to him two things. First, it's not a negotiation, no wall. And
now, no wall. Okay. A big portion of the area that the wall would be designated towards would be the southern border of California, for example. Immediately to the southern portion of the state, west of New Mexico, you've got an area that kind of tips off on the top part of New Mexico called Baja California. And so you've got a lot of places along that border, moving all the way over from the southern state of Texas, all the way over to California is a biggest part of the wall issue, the concern area. California is one of only a handful of states which allows illegal immigrants to be documented for their census purposes. It has been estimated as recently as this week that the state of California may very well be currently holding 9 additional electoral votes, and it already has 55, 9 additional electoral votes because of the practice of counting illegal immigrants. Of course, they would not want the wall, because now, in an environment where the Electoral College is so important in electing the president, and we're going to rip into this here momentarily, they want all the electoral muscle they can get their hands on. Now, I'm coming to you live from the state of Alabama, and our measly little, well, ironically enough, 9 electoral votes. So the practice in California of counting illegals in the census essentially negates the entire state of Alabama and its influence in electing the president of the United States. There are some more sparsely populated states, the Wyomings and Montanas of the world, where it takes 2, maybe 3 states out in the upper Midwest. The Electoral College debate, and this, I'm so fascinated by this because it's so important to realize that there are so many stories out there that are, if you ebb and flow and weave them together, you begin to realize that there's a lot of overlap in what's taking place in this country today. So here we have President Trump doubling down, tripling down, and quadrupling down on the wall. Chuck Schumer making the comment that there's no chance whatsoever that Trump's ever going to get the wall. Then Trump comes up with the quotes of administrations past, proving the fact that what he desires was actually desired by almost every previous administration to one degree or another throughout the history of this country. Then the Democrats simultaneously begin to attack the Electoral College. counting illegals for the purposes of representation and the lack of border security are stories which are cousins. One of the reasons that I still support the Electoral College to this point, despite the fact that there have been some arguments that I will at least consider against it until you begin to get into the intellect of the average American voter, not seeing the comparison between these two issues and what's really going on in this country. So as we move through the immigration debate, let's not remember what the national news media, which quite frankly, it's the media's fault that I believe the Electoral College needs to be remaining in place. But let's not forget the fact, just like with CBS News, that the national news media has been every bit as fascinated with the issue of immigration policy as long as Trump or Schumer or Pelosi or any previous administration, as the CBS News clip points out.
President Obama is sending 1,200 National Guard troops to boost security along the U.S.-Mexican border. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Chip Reid has the details. Good morning, Chip.
Well, good morning, Betty. In addition to the troops, the president is also requesting $500 million for border security. But some border state politicians are already saying more help is needed.
I appreciate the additional 1,200 being sent of the Guard, as well as additional $500 million. But it's simply not enough.
Under President Obama's border plan, the National Guard will assist with intelligence gathering, surveillance, reconnaissance support, analysis and training, as well as supporting counter-narcotics enforcement. This is not the first time troops have been called upon to assist with border security. In 2006, then President Bush ordered a similar operation, which allowed border agents to spend more time arresting illegal immigrants. Mr. Obama's announcement comes just weeks after Arizona enacted its controversial new immigration law, which gives police greater authority to question suspected illegal immigrants.
Now, most Republicans do support the president's move, but they say it's not enough to change their opposition to comprehensive immigration reform. Chances of that passing this year still appear bleak. Betty?
CBS's Chip Reid at the White House. Thank you.
A lot happens early.
So even back in the early days of the Obama administration, we're talking about, in this case, $500 million. Obviously, it's not $5 billion. But you're also talking about an administration that at least attempted to send $100 billion to the Middle East for the purposes of soothing tensions over there in the oil exporting countries, if you will. A lot of that money was, in fact, stopped before it ever had an opportunity to reach its destination. But I think it's very important to realize that the $5 billion that President Trump is seeking simply is not anything of any kind of a large measure whatsoever. The United States government, if you took the entire United States government and you broke it down to just its constitutional duties, borders and military, et cetera, just the duties that the Constitution, the requirements that the Constitution suggests that the United States government is responsible for, it costs about $6.6 billion a month to run this country. So we are talking about a substantially small amount of money when you're considering 1 month's income to build the entire wall. Guys, let me tell you something. If you're going to get married, you're going to pop the question to that special young lady, and you've been saving up for that special diamond ring. If you spend 1 month's salary on her engagement ring, she's probably going to kick you in the ass and tell you to get lost. Do you understand what a small amount of money 1 month's salary or 1 month's income is as it relates to the security of this nation? But yet that's what's being touted by Obama, by Hillary, by Pelosi, by Schumer. And what happens is it tends to fall on the ears of those that are left without a clue. Trump's remarks also underscore his apparent unwillingness to compromise on security, at least some of the border wall funding that he's demanded, despite the insistence of Pelosi that Democrats will never pay for a wall. Catch the line. Democrats will never pay for a wall. First off, it's not purely a Democratic decision. Secondly, the House of Representatives represents Republicans as well, independents as well, and it's not Democrat money to begin with. But according to Pelosi, the Democrats will never pay for a wall. In an interview that was on yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press, White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney told Chuck Todd that Trump was willing to agree, and he mentioned this at the Rose Garden press conference, to take a concrete wall off of the table. Well, it's not a concrete wall to begin with. It's basically a solid steel picket fence. But then again, I imagine I'm splitting hairs. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing here is President Trump demanding from the House of Representatives, which they themselves had demanded until it was no longer politically expedient to do so, as with the words of President Obama in the early days of his administration when he said,
"The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders, and that should help stem some of the tide of illegal immigration in this country."
And then there's that. America and the Michael Hart Show is brought to you in part by the Unknown America Project. Unknown America, myths and little-known oddities about the greatest nation on earth, explores many of the falsehoods and fallacies and revisions in American history that impact the beliefs and the thoughts of many people in this country today. So if you'd like to learn some of the most enduring myths that have been perpetrated on the American public for the last 100-plus years in this country, go check out the book at heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. And pick up a copy of Unknown America. It comes out to you absolutely no shipping, be autographed, and we'll even send you a copy of the United States Constitution as our way of saying thanks. So support the Unknown America Project by simply going to theunknownamerica.com, and thank you for your support.
Does your home have a water problem? Drainage around your home can cause all kinds of headaches. Disease-causing mold, cracks in walls, foundation failure, even roof leaks. At Alabama Water Management, we know that problems can often be fixed from where the water is coming from, outside. Our approach is less invasive and less expensive. So before you spend thousands on a potentially unnecessary waterproofing system, call Alabama Water Management for a free evaluation. Alabama Water Management. Don't waterproof, water prevent.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com.
It's not right versus left. It's us versus them. It's the Michael Hart Show.
This electoral college story that we're going to break into, because one of the things that a lot of people just do not realize is that the Democrats, as they currently are conditioned, have a deep desire, a very deep-seated desire to completely reinvent America. And I am not exaggerating on that. They would get rid of the Constitution in a heartbeat if they had the opportunity to. I have a couple stories here that, actually 3 of them, that I'm going to have to save until tomorrow because there's just too many other things to talk about. But I do want to read the headlines to you, okay? Because I believe that this is a big part of why the move towards the eradication of the Electoral College scares me so much. And I'll also say that the original justification for it, while not obsolete, is a little bit archaic, just a little bit. But then there is other rationales to really shore it up and perhaps clean it up a little bit. It's become a little nepotistic, politically speaking. But I want you to listen to these three trending headlines from this past weekend. And this really gives me a great deal of pause. GOP's Steve Scalise shuts down Twitter debate on taxes with Ocasio-Cortez after radical followers, speaking of Cortez's, allude to Virginia shooting. So here's Scalise having an online and very public debate with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was recently inaugurated. Let me do my air quotes here. And then all of a sudden, we get things like, from the Ocasio-Cortez camp, not her, but her followers, speaking of Steve Scalise, snipe his ass. All right. Now, let's put this story over here to the side. Maybe we'll save it for tomorrow, or maybe we'll just enshrine it on the wall because it just is such a great demonstration of the DAs that are out there. Rashida Tlaib calls Trump an expletive during a pitch to impeach. Freshman U.S. Representative Rashida Tlaib wasted no time in calling for the impeachment of President Trump just hours after being sworn in. Speaking to a crowd of supporters Thursday night, she, by the way, one of the first Muslim women elected to Congress, said of Trump, "People love you and you win. And when your son looks at you and says, 'Mommy, look, you won. Bullies don't win.' And I said, 'Baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there and we're going to impeach the mother F word.'" Now, this woman is saying this to her son. "Don't worry about it, baby. We're going to go in there and impeach the mother." Obviously, she's not a practicing Muslim. But now this is Ocasio-Cortez's followers alluding to the attempted murder of Steve Scalise. We have got another socialist Democrat, and Rashida Tlaib calling Trump an MF. All right, let's put that one over here in the "wow, you are a dumbass" drawer. And then we are going to have Seinfeld, a program that has not been on the air in some years. Seinfeld is the latest TV classic to offend millennials over jokes about the soup Nazi and same-sex relationships. So let's put this particular story over here in the same drawer for future discussed, and then take a look at the Electoral College. Now, these things might seem to be entirely unrelated on the surface, but I disagree. If you look at the Rashida story, Ocasio-Cortez, millennials offended by a TV program that's not even on the air anymore. Bless your little hearts. Man, y'all really are a dumb bunch. But offended by the reruns of Seinfeld, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reason that the story with the Electoral College concerns me so much is the fact that it was designed as a means of, and I'm not going to disagree with the fact that there was a little bit of bigotry in it. But it wasn't just bigotry towards Black Americans. It was also bigotry towards females. It's very important to remember that African American males were granted the right to vote long before white females. So let's make sure that we've got our deck of history cards out as we break this story down. But in addition to not securing the borders, not coming up with the money for the wall, the two other things that the Democrats are seeking in their very first recently minted blue term is the eradication of the Electoral College. With the party in control, several House Democrats have moved ahead this past week with legislation aimed at changing future presidential elections and curtailing the power of the commander-in-chief. Now, what's interesting about this is that there was so much talk about the nuclear option when the Democrats held the House of Representatives, how they were introducing, because they both upper and lower house creates their own rules. Democrats changed the rules to actually assist their party. They get booted out, Boehner takes over, and all of a sudden they're crying foul because Boehner is using the very rule policy that they wrote and passed. I mean, golly, it really does go all the way to the top, doesn't it? Okay. Let me see if I can shave a few points off my IQ and get down into the muck here just a little bit for people to understand, not you people, but people that aren't listening to this program that I hope you'll share it with, understand what's going on right before them. In addition to the articles of impeachment, there is a lot of talk about doing away with the Electoral College. Now, that particular piece of legislation or the bill or the language is already drafted. Will it succeed? Most people would think no. And I tell you what, if you would ask me 2 days ago, I would have also probably thought no. But I'm not so sure any longer. Everything that we know politically speaking in this nation is changing right before our very eyes. Again, there was a time in this country where women were not allowed to vote. Few states, like New Jersey, never really observed that. They would always allow women to vote under certain strict conditions. By the way, strict conditions they could almost never meet. Not that they were trying to keep them from voting, but just because of their short-sightedness at that particular point in time. More on that perhaps on Wednesday's edition of Unknown America. But also it's important to remember that there was a time in this nation's history where United States senators were appointed by the respective state legislatures. We didn't vote on them at the popular level. They were voted on in our respective state capitals. Our electors vote in their respective state capitals. The Electoral College was primarily originally designed so that the large population centers would not have an overwhelming amount of influence on the outcome of the election. Especially when those population centers, you don't want to really look at a state as a population center. It's more the urban areas. But looking at places like California for the purposes of this example, and it's 55 electoral votes, 9 of them, by some reports, because of their counting of illegal immigrants in that state, and the fact that that very practice skews the results of the Electoral College in a presidential election. First off, I find that to be criminal, but that's one man's opinion. When U.S. citizens go to the polls to elect a president, and I know that everybody thinks the president's elected in November, but the president of the United States is actually elected in December, almost a full month after we vote the popular vote. You are, in fact, voting for a particular slate of electors. In every state but Maine and Nebraska, the candidate who wins the most votes in the state receives all the state's electoral votes. In other words, whoever wins the state of Alabama gets all of 9 of Alabama's electors. Although, constitutionally speaking, the electors can, in fact, change their mind at the last moment. They rarely do. Places like Maine and Nebraska, actually, they will give a pro rata share of the electors based on the popular vote count in that state. The electors then meet in their respective states about a month after the popular election, the general. There they cast a ballot for president and a second for vice president. They're not voted on as a ticket. A candidate must receive a majority of electoral votes to be elected president. The reason that the Constitution has called for this extra layer, rather than just providing for the direct election of the president, is that most of the nation's founders, and we had detailed this before, we're a little timid about democracy. That's why the United States of America is not a democracy. We are a democratically elected republic. James Madison worried about what he called factions, which he defined as groups of citizens who have a common interest in some proposal that would either violate the rights of other citizens or would harm the nation as a whole. Madison's fear, which Alexius Tocqueville actually later dubbed the tyranny of the majority. The Tocqueville was concerned was a faction would grow to encompass more than 50% of the population, at which point it would sacrifice to its ruling passion or interest both the public good and the rights of other citizens. It's also interesting to note, if we stop right here for just a moment, that there is no and there was no electoral college in Germany in the 1930s when Adolf Hitler was elected, and he was elected. I understand people throw things in my face like, well, remember, don't you understand the beer hall pushed, which is German for coup d'etat? And I'm like, yeah, but that also happened almost a decade prior. Had nothing to do with the election. So it's interesting when you look at this from a constitutional perspective. As Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist Papers, the Constitution is designed to ensure, this is a quote, by the way, that the office of the president will never fall to the lot of any man who was not in an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications. The point of the Electoral College is to preserve the sense of the people, while at the same time ensuring that a president is chosen by men, and this is a quote, by the way, men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the station, meaning the office, and acting under circumstances favorable to deliberation and to a judicious combination of all the reasons of inducements which were popular to govern their choice. Now, this is real fancy British-esque verbiage that is basically saying the country is extremely large and getting larger, because you've got to remember, large is in a direct relationship with transportation. You know, we can fly to California from the East Coast to the West Coast in 5 hours. Back in the day, for them to leave Richmond and go to D.C. was a couple days by horse. They were concerned not just the large population centers, and here's where it gets a little dicey. They were concerned not just with the large population centers, but when Hamilton is referring to this in the Federalist Papers, he's not putting forth a literacy test as the litmus test to be president. But what he is saying is the further west you get away or the further south you got away from D.C., the less a candidate would know about what's going on in D.C. Newspapers didn't get as deep into the political discourse then as they do now. They were quite topical. In addition, you didn't have broadcast radio, conservative talk, programs like this that could potentially be heard by 5 billion people across the world via the internet. Certainly didn't have social media. So the point is that people were not exposed in vast numbers to enough information to understand the workings and concerns of federal government. The Electoral College, not dissimilar from the structure of our state legislatures is set up to represent people in those areas where you would have one chosen elector that was responsible in that region for the needs and concerns of those people. So in that sense, your electors, at least theoretically, become somewhat of a quasi yet temporal senator, if you will. It was very obvious that the Founding Fathers were very suspicious at this time of anything centralized, even in the voting process. And so they were, to a degree, afraid of democracy as we understand it. Because they knew, just like Hitler found out, that if you have enough people that are compelled, because Hitler, he didn't win 50% plus. There was so many parties. There was 5 parties in Nazi Germany at that time. It was possible for him to win with only about 41% of the total popular vote because he was so further behind, or ahead rather, of the other parties. In modern practice, the Electoral College has become a formality. Yes, that's the reason why major news outlets can call the election on election night, because as the states go, so go the electors. Most electors are loyal members of the parties that has selected them. And in 26 states plus D.C., electors are in fact bound by laws or party pledges to vote in accord with the popular vote that was stated on election day. Although an elector could, in principle, change his or her vote over the course of the next 41 days, despite the fact it's very, very rare. Here's where it gets a little dicey, though, as I pointed out earlier. And this is what Pelosi and the Pelosiites are dealing with. The Electoral College was not the only constitutional limitation on direct democracy, though we have discarded many of those limitations. People are often talking about how the Constitution has not been changed significantly. Oh, yeah, it has. Yes. Many of these limitations, as we pointed out, like senators initially being appointed by state legislatures and states allowing women to vote, and you could even make the argument of the 3/5 clause to a degree, which was not nearly as atrocious or egregious as many people believe, but it doesn't change the fact that there have been significant changes to the United States Constitution in years past. So could it happen to the Electoral College? Absolutely. Will it be taken up? Absolutely. But here's the problem, and here's where my concern spikes. In this day and time, compliments of talk radio, TV, the internet, blogs, vlogs, magazines, and your drunk uncle who works at the Walmart after hours, everybody and their brother is a political commentator. You get it piped into your computers. It's on your smartphone. This program is currently heard live on 3 or 4 different platforms and then archived on 3 or 4 more after it's over with. There is such a ubiquitous nature to the press. There's no way you can miss it. Missing the news of the day, at least somebody's opinion on it, would be like missing a hooker in a whorehouse. It just doesn't work that way. It's everywhere. But it's not all correct. And that's the biggest threat to the Electoral College. Back in the days of the Founding Fathers, yes, it is true, they did not want the large urban centers making presidential selections exclusive to the more rural or, let's just say, removed areas, the flyover country. They wouldn't have known it as that because there were no planes then, but then again, I digress. But their concern was people having the information for a popular vote. They expressed those concerns, and Hamilton did so quite eloquently in the Federalist Papers, which at the time are just called the Federalist. The concerns were legitimate. They were quite legitimate. But now the concerns, although similar, have changed. Think of it this way for just a moment. Let's go back to this for just one quick second, okay? We're talking about the Electoral College. But I want you to listen to this from 5 years ago.
Illegal immigration is wrong, and a primary goal of comprehensive immigration reform must be to dramatically curtail future illegal immigration. Second, operational control of our borders through significant additional increases in infrastructure, technology, and border personnel must be achieved within a year of enactment.
That was then. This is now.
Senator McConnell wanted me to negotiate the wall with President Trump. I said to him two things. First, it's not a negotiation, no wall. And second, I said only you can persuade him that he shouldn't do the wall because it'll cause a government shutdown.
Okay, so that's a demonstration of a politician, Chuck Schumer in this case, utilizing both of his primary orifices for the purposes of giving a point. One day he's talking out of his mouth, the next day he's talking out of his backside. Taking two entirely opposing positions on the exact same issue, entirely dependent upon who is currently in office. Now, enter the very left-leaning, almost entirely socialistic media. You see, back in the day, the Founding Fathers were concerned not just about the population centers, but about people voting for office, voting for the office of president, that did not have the intellectual qualifications. Some have made the argument, oh yeah, that was to disenfranchise the blacks. No, it wasn't, because at this point in time, the women didn't have the vote. It was to make certain stupid people didn't vote. This is also one of the reasons why you had to be a landowner at the time. Because the Founding Fathers felt like, hey, look, if you're not paying taxes, if you don't own a piece of this country, you ain't got the right to vote on it. I don't own any stock in Coca-Cola, so why should I be able to vote when their stockholder meetings come around? I have no vested interest in that company. So it's a very similar ideology. But not only did they want you to have some skin in the game, they felt like you needed to know what you were talking about. An elector could represent a certain district of a state, and that's where we get our electors from. Every state gets 2 for each senator, and then 1 for each House district. The state of Alabama has 9. California has 55, etc. But although the Founding Fathers had a concern at that point in our history about the level of understanding, not necessarily intellect, because obviously, smarts and wisdom can go together, but just the involvement in community and what was going on in the nation that would qualify somebody not just to be president, but to vote for president. Now enter today's media. When you have the Chuck Schumers of the world, one day saying, oh, we need to tighten up security, and then just a handful of years later, completely backtracking. Obama just 3 days ago talking about how Trump is foolish and imbecilic. And then comments like this.
The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders. And that should help stem some of the tide of illegal immigration in this country.
Now, that particular statement was made in Obama's last year in the Senate. He was only there for a couple of years anyway. How many people in the media today, like that guy, I think, was he in Australia that CNN was said like the reporter of the year and found out 36 or 37 of his stories were just completely fabricated, the people didn't even exist? When the media is culpable or complicit in the distribution and disbursement falsehoods and lies, then shouldn't we have the same concern about the Electoral College? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? That the concern of the framers was that people were not getting the information because the further you got away from the urban centers, the less engaged you were in the urban centers and perhaps the inner workings, not just of your state government, but of the federal government. I mean, you got to remember something here, gang. There was a time in this country, I know this is kind of hard to swallow, but there was a time in this country where, you know, 1700s, 1800s, early 1800s, there was a time in this country's history where a good portion of the American population didn't even know there was a federal government. They knew there was something out there, but they didn't understand it the way we understand it because it wasn't in their lives. This is pre-income tax days. This is pre-regulation for everything days. So here we have a very complicit media that is all too willing to spread misrepresentations and falsehoods. Hell, I've written a whole book about it. I got 2 other books in the works, a kid's book version of the book. The reason I'm so stalled out on getting the second book out, I got so much information, I don't know what to put in the book. Which, by the way, theunknownamerica.com, go buy a copy of it. Help a brother out here, would you? Help me keep the lights on. That's the way we roll here. That's right. Years ago, I used to always signed off every single day. Go do something patriotic. Go make a profit. All right. So the bottom line here is if we're going to have Democrats refuse to build a wall, come with me on this one, okay? I'm going to tie this all together. We have Democrats that refuse to fund a wall. You have states that allow illegal immigrants to come in, sanctuary city or not. They don't have to pass a naturalization test. They don't have to speak English. They don't really have to hold a job. These benefits are bestowed upon them by the Democrats. So who are they likely to vote for? The Democrats. Then because in some states the state census is counting them, that reflects the total number of electoral college votes. Then you have the complicit media. So you've got this whole group of people, i.e. the illegals, that are coming here without a clue, that are every bit as disenfranchised from reality. How in the world do you watch Fox News or even that cute little boy Rachel Maddow, if you don't speak English? Now, I'm not suggesting that they all don't speak English. But that certainly seems to be the desire of the Democrats. So here we have the Democrats expanding their voter base by eliminating the wall, open borders, census counting, and now the elimination of the Electoral College so that states vote purely along popular vote lines. Do you not see the connection between the two? It's so unbelievably apparent if you step back from it. I know that Donald Trump can be a bonehead sometimes. I know that he can say idiotic things sometimes. Those of you that have been listening to me since my hair was black know that I have said many, many, many times that it's not just left versus right, but us versus them, and that Trump tweets too darn much, and he does. And I don't care who disagrees with me. I got into a dust-up with Ann Coulter about that one time, where she made the comment that Trump, to my face, that Trump should be head of the communications department of the U.S., press secretary. I'm like, get out of here. But the point is, 2 of the biggest stories from this past week, 2 of the biggest stories that we had to contend with from this past week, actually 2.5 and a third, I suppose it is, the wall, the shutdown, and now the debate between House Democrats about whether or not to eliminate the Electoral College. There's also a voting access bill among one of the first bills Democrats will consider is an effort to make it easier for people to vote. This bill would also create automatic national voter registration, expanding access to early and online, because there's no fraud in online registration. Additionally, it would beef up federal support for state voter systems, including paper ballots to prevent fraud and restore voting rights to former prisoners. Now, you think about that one for a second. It's a tough debate to have about people that have served their time and paid their dues. But if everybody that's incarcerated in a federal prison suddenly has their voting rights restored via the Democrat Party, what's the likelihood they're going to have fealty towards the Democrat Party? So it's going to be the restoration of voter rights for former prisoners, would also restore protections included in the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which, by the way, that was a bill that was primarily passed by the Republicans, but the Democrats have loved taking credit for it. So we've got pardons, impeachments, electoral college, shutdowns, and walls. While simultaneously, we have got the followers of Alexandria Cortez suggesting that somebody should snipe again at Steve Scalise, and our brand new minted Muslim representative calling the President of the United States an MF. Now, can you imagine, okay, on the national level, let's take away the Electoral College, and then you look at places like New York, where you have got Alexandria Cortez, who has just announced recently that she is going to be paying her interns, which is typically an unpaid position. She didn't know what an intern meant. And then you have got this Muslim from Michigan demanding the impeachment of Donald Trump while calling him the MF word. And then you have a complicit media that is all too willing to continue to advance that notion. Now, take the Electoral College out of the equation, and the next president of the United States could be an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or a Cory Booker, or a Kamala Harris, or any one of a number of the socialist Democrats that are out in this country today. Because I will tell you something with no uncertain terms, and I am dead serious about this. If the Electoral College was eliminated, and it would not be beyond the pale that it gets legitimate pressure behind it, then this country would flip to full-blown socialism within one election cycle. Why? Because you have the Alexandria Cortezes of the world waiting in the shadows with literally unimaginable support from people that are so unbelievably stupid that they simply have no recollections because of the media of events such as this.
Illegal immigration is wrong. And a primary goal of comprehensive immigration reform must be to dramatically curtail future illegal immigration. Second, operational control of our borders through significant additional increases in infrastructure, technology, and border personnel must be achieved within a year of enactment.
And then there's that. Stick around, you're listening to And Then There's That on the Heart of America Broadcasting Network. Quick break, coming right back at you, so y'all stick around. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a one-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land. Heart of America and the Michael Hart Show is brought to you in part by the Unknown America Project. Unknown America Myths and Little-Known Oddities about the greatest nation on earth explores many of the falsehoods and fallacies and revisions in American history that impact the beliefs and the thoughts of many people in this country today. So if you'd like to learn some of the most enduring myths that have been perpetrated on the American public for the last 100-plus years in this country, go check out the book at heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. And pick up a copy of Unknown America. It comes out to you absolutely no shipping, be autographed, and we'll even send you a copy of the United States Constitution as our way of saying thanks. So support the Unknown America Project by simply going to theunknownamerica.com, and thank you for your support.
Does your home have a water problem? Drainage around your home can cause all kinds of headaches. Disease-causing mold, cracks in walls, foundation failure, even roof leaks. At Alabama Water Management, we know that problems can often be fixed from where the water is coming from, outside. Our approach is less invasive and less expensive. So before you spend thousands on a potentially unnecessary waterproofing system, call Alabama Water Management for a free evaluation. Alabama Water Management. Don't waterproof, water prevent.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com.
Anyone can tell you the news.
We welcome Diamond and Silk.
Mark Zuckerberg will end up, and it's going to be a face without the book. Book without the face.
Hey, Megan, how are you?
Now they're chipping away at the normalization of pedophilia, and the left is embracing this type of behavior.
We welcome Dinesh D'Souza.
I know I ticked him off. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Hey, welcome back. Still about 25 minutes to go in this edition of the broadcast. You're welcome to give us a call in on this edition of, and then there's that. You can reach us at 929-477-3761. That's 929-477-3761. Please, if you're listening to us on the Twitter feed, I know that we have moved the Facebook feed back over to YouTube. There's so many places to listen to the program. But if you are listening to us live, do me a solid and share the program if you don't mind. Also, do want to remind you, if you are in the general listening area, about the program Outspoken with Joe Lockett. Joe's program comes on Alabama Cable Network. You can Google the website. But Alabama Cable Network every single night, 6 p.m. Central Time. I am a special guest with Joe every Thursday on Alabama Cable Network. And you can check that out, Channel 80 if you are likely, if you're a Charter Spectrum, or you can watch it online. Joe does a great job, and he and I get into some pretty serious dust-ups throughout the course of that particular hour. So check us out. Going to be on a little bit later in the week with our good buddy Amy Fuller from YouTube America. I haven't scheduled that out yet. I'll give you some more information on that. And then I think it's tomorrow at 11:45, 11:30 Central Time, I'll be on the Hagee hotline, and we'll be talking a bit about, this is the Hagee Ministries, we'll be talking a bit about the shutdown and what it means to Americans, and does it benefit Donald Trump, who has now said that he will keep the government closed forever if, in fact, he does not get his wall funding. Now it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how this particular event unfolds. But before we get to the calls, and we have a couple folks hanging on for us right now, I really and truly want to double down on the fact that if people don't understand the role of the media and what we have done in terms of the book, that's why I'm no longer even referring to it as Unknown America. Now it's the Unknown America Project. And the reason I say that is that we are doing everything in our power to educate people on how unbelievably ignorant people are about the country and the world around them. I used to go when I would get these like media hits. People ask me if I want to come on their TV program or the radio program, or I'd send out a press release or whatever. I would list, the Betsy Ross story, Rosa Parks, Declaration of Independence, Liberty Bell story, everything that you've read.